This week on Merchants of Change, we've got Connor Gallo. Connor played college football at Union College before making the transition into sales. He's worked in both financial services and marketing automation technology and leadership and sales roles, finding success at every stop in his journey, including the latest Boston tech darling, Klaviyo, pre-IPO. Today, he is the Director of Enterprise Sales at Fintrix, a leading resource for private wealth data and research. Here he is, Connor Gallo.
I'm JR Butler, co-founder and CEO of the Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes and military veterans into becoming a professional salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change.
What's up, kid? How we doing, Connor? I'm psyched to have you on the show today, brother.
Yeah, JR, I appreciate it, man. Really excited about the opportunity. Obviously looking into, what you guys are doing, and I think it's an awesome platform and certainly something that's needed in the space. So this is awesome.
I appreciate that, man. I started the company because I wish the company existed when I got out of sports, and I also wish the company existed when I was hiring salespeople. So that's refreshing to hear. So from like a context perspective, Connor, what we like to do is go into your athletic career a little bit of background, talk about your transition, and then spend the rest of the time really digging in on what you've learned in your sales career, because we're really serving multiple audiences. It's folks that are thinking about potentially a career in sales. It's folks that are new to it, and we also have a lot of leadership that likes to listen in, and seasoned sellers that like to listen in and get motivated and find like little tips and tricks. So I always start with a super broad question, which is, if I asked you what your favorite memories are from your athletic career, what are the first few things that pop into your head?
All right. Yeah, I'm going to take you a little far back to youth football and youth basketball. Actually, my hometown, Troy, New York. I'll probably talk about it a dozen times on this podcast, and if any of my friends or family listen, they'll be like, "Wow, that was even quick for him to bring up his hometown." So we had just a great group of young guys that all played together, all came up together. And recently we were actually just honored in our, small little hometown Hall of Fame thing. That was pretty cool for our CYO team that went 44-0 and our youth football team that went 11-0. So that was awesome. But I think to tie it back to, the value of athletics and the discipline that you learn and how it translates into sales. I was a heavier young kid back when I was 12 and 13. And I remember needing to lose like 30 to 35 pounds to play at the level above where all my friends already were. So any higher and I would have gone up to, like the 16-year-old level. So I had to lose weight. And I remember putting on a hoodie and a garbage bag 5 days a week before practice. Back then in New York, we were practicing every single day come August 1st. I'd run 3.5 miles on the track in a hoodie and a garbage bag before practice, and then I'd go out to practice and ended up losing the weight. And I don't want anyone to think, God, what kind of home did you grow up in? My parents are the best. My mom is the sweetest woman in the world. Just we didn't really know any better. I'm also the youngest of 4 boys that really set that tone early on to just go out and work your ass off. So that's definitely up there. And then throwing a touchdown pass to my brother in college was just an all-time moment that I'll never forget. So I would say those two for sure.
Dude, that is amazing. A touchdown to your brother. That's sick. I know you're one of 4. I'm one of 3, Connor. So I unfortunately I'm on the other bookend of you. So like I'm the oldest. I know you were the youngest. So like I know I know from experience how much you were terrorized growing up, dude.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. Certainly some memories that I can pluck from if needed. You got me still, JR?
I still got you. Yeah. And by the way, we'll edit that out. So Troy, you mentioned Troy, New York, Connor. Isn't that's
Yep.
where I played against RPI in college? That's where RPI is based,
Yeah,
right?
it sure is.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm born. Obviously being born and raised there, it's also Union's biggest rival.
Yep.
And that the touchdown that I'd thrown to my brother was at RPI in our hometown. So it was pretty cool, man. It was like we were in our backyard. So it was pretty special.
That's amazing. And Troy actually reminds me a lot of where I grew up, the Worcester, Massachusetts area. You know, very blue collar, hardworking, great salt of the earth people. I love that. That's awesome.
A lot of pride, man. There's a lot of pride in
how
town
would
like
how do you think your teammates would describe you? How do you think your teammates would describe you, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to call most of them still some of my best friends and closest buddies. I would say vehemently loyal, to a fault most times. Whatever had to happen, whether that was, me not even touching the ball or touching the rock, just getting the W. That was paramount. That's what mattered most. And I think somebody that was going to work their ass off, put in the time and commit to what we were all there to do. I greatly valued being on a team and having that goal of trying to win, regardless of what it meant or what other sacrifice you had to make socially or regardless. So, I'd say those three things. I would hope anyway. I could call a couple of them right now. They'd probably add in a few extras, but I'd say those are the top three.
Yeah, I love that. It's the old like from the town, like whose car are we taking, like that type of loyalty.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's 100% right. Me and my brothers say that to each other all the time. Whose car we take?
Yeah, same here. Now, obviously, you had a great career at Union. Did you have a plan for what life was going to be like after football? Like, talk to us about what that transition experience was like, and how you kind of got into the career and industry that you ended up following.
Yeah, I would say I didn't have a plan, just to get out there ahead with the answer. I certainly didn't. So for anyone that's coming out of school, you're more often than not may not have a plan, and that's okay. I've said this to some younger guys that I keep in touch with, or a new class coming out of Union, but figure out what you don't want to do first. I think that's most important. It's better to fail fast and understand a path that may not be for you early on, rather than when you're 34 with a baby on the way and married. It's a little tougher to make that career change. I was very fortunate. I was chatting with Austin prior to kicking off. Union does a really good job of keeping the alumni network super close, and the football program does an awesome job of doing the same. And bringing guys back, helping seniors, understand what the potential paths forward might be. So I certainly leaned heavy on that. And I'm also very fortunate. My oldest brother was a VP of sales at HubSpot for a number of years. He's since moved on to CRO positions. So he set a path that I felt, hey, maybe this is something that my athletic background can translate pretty nicely to. Whether it was sales or whatever I wanted to do, I did know for certain that I definitely wanted to be in leadership. And, being a captain at Union, that's really all that I focused on and cared about. No matter what avenue it might have been, just being in a leadership role was most important to me. But like everything else, you got to work your way there. You have to prove that you have the skill set, work your ass off, and then be a leader that any team working under you can look to and say, like, all right, I know Gallo has the ability to do it, and I also know that he's going to do whatever it takes to help me succeed. So
That's awesome that you had your older brother kind of lead the way, and it's such a phenomenal company as HubSpot, right?
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
that's pretty solid shoes to follow in. What do you
Big
think?
time.
Like,
I've been doing it my whole
yeah.
life, man. Trying to fill their shoes.
uh, um, when you look back at that time, Connor, what do you think was the hardest part of the transition? I think me and you share the same opinion on this, but I wanted to hear it from you. What was the hardest part of that?
Yeah, man, there were a few. One, I didn't have any money, so I also was at home in Troy, New York, and my brother was in Boston. So he obviously helped me out, get on my feet a little bit, which I'm certainly super gracious for. Um, so it's really just taking a chance and moving to, for us, a big city, and I think the toughest part is for 17 years consecutively, you have one single identity, and that's an athlete. And for me, more specifically, a football player. Um, and then it's just gone. And you're kind of left there trying to figure out, well, shit, like what is my identity now? What is it going to be? And how do I even pretend to care as a 21-year-old kid about this job that I have as much as I did with football and preparing for football and working out for football and watching film and all this other stuff. Um, so it's hard, and frankly, when you're 21, you're probably living with 4 or 5 other buddies in an apartment. You don't really have responsibilities. You don't really have to worry about anything else other than just this job. Um, so I think that's where figuring out what you don't want to do is really, really important early on in your career. It might be sales, but is it tech sales? Is it medical devices? Do you want to be going door to door, or would you prefer to be in a cubicle or in an office primarily? So I think there's a lot of things that you really have to learn and fail fast at.
You do, yeah. And I think like just hearing you talk about it, like the way we describe it is, it's like purpose, right? Like, when you're in uniform, you have such a, and we do veterans too, right? Like the purpose of yourself as a union football player is so strong and so driven. The accountability you have to your teammates and to like winning every Saturday is so strong. And then on the veteran side, like defending our freedoms as a country, it's really, really hard when you lose that, man. It sucks. Like there's no other way to put it except it sucks.
It does. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No,
I was going to say it definitely does. I think equally as exciting though too, JR, is finding out what the next purpose is. As corny as that may sound, you also start with a clean slate. You start in a new city where nobody knows you. You start in a new career where no one knows you. You get to control, perception and reality. You get to control maybe, hey, there were some things that I could have done differently or I should have done differently in college or coming up. And now for the kids coming out of school today, there's so much content out there. There's so much stuff that they can lean on and read and listen to, for even as something as simple as starting your day, how to structure your day, what should you do, journaling, mental health. I mean, all the stuff that's available now, it's almost like saturated. I think one skill set for younger kids is like sifting through the bullshit, frankly, of really focusing and isolating what matters most and what they should care about. But I think finding that new purpose also should excite the hell out of anyone that's wired like you and I are, like an athlete.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And they do. It's like a blessing and a curse in terms of the amount of information and content that's out there. To your point, right? Like that's a superpower is to see through the BS and make sure you're listening to the right voices. A huge challenge in corporate America because of the advent of the LinkedIn influencer and some of the stuff that these people spew about like things like work-life balance and rights and privileges over expectations and responsibilities. It's like, man, like somebody's paying you a base salary, a variable comp, equity, and benefits, like they don't owe you anything else other than that. Like it is a superpower, and it's a blessing and a curse, you know.
Totally agree,
Now,
man. I think,
yeah, totally. Now, so as you got into sales, Connor, you had an advantage with your brother, but like, did you recognize like immediately the skills that were going to translate? Did like some of that great Union alumni network start helping you think about that? Like, how did you like? What were some of those translatable skills, and how did you start to realize them?
yeah, immediately I knew foundationally, just from old alumni coming in, my brother, once you start the interviewing process as a senior, it gets thrown at you a lot. Like, hey, you're an athlete. We love to hire athletes, but I think the why was always missing, or anything that was micro level, double click into, hey, can you talk to me more about how it's going to actually translate? And that took some time for me to process, comprehend, and actually in detail think about what really does translate from the athletic background. And I think it's less about the actual action of playing a sport, and much rather everything that happens before that. Watching film, in the weight room, taking care of your body, all of the foundational preparatory work that goes into being ready to perform on a field or on a court, is what I think translates the most. It's having that discipline. You mentioned it earlier. I saw some content that you put up, like doing the hard stuff. Nobody wants to do that. But if you can train yourself, like anything else, if you can train yourself to do that shit, especially today when nobody wants to do it, and frankly, it's almost encouraged not to do the hard stuff, you will be a percent of the percent and be in such a great position. Because the truth is, the leaders at all these companies still want that. They still want the people that are willing to grind their ass off. And I said this last week in one of our kickoffs, our sales kickoffs, that there's just never going to be a replacement or replacement for hard work and just putting in the effort. So I think athletically, it's wanting to do that stuff, wake up early, get to the gym, get an extra practice in, whether it's catching 100 balls after practice or before practice or doing the extra film work. It's taking that same discipline and now just applying it to a different process, and I say it to my reps all the time. A lot of guys that I try to hire or women that I try to hire from athletic backgrounds, and I challenge them and I ask, hey, if you were, let's say you made it to the show, if you're a baseball player, or you made it to the league, if you had that career, how often would you be putting in extra work to try to sniff the field? How much shit would you be doing on the side? They'd be like, oh my God, I'd be, in the weight room, I'd be doing extra cardio, I'd be watching extra film, I'd be doing stim, I'd be getting PT done. And I'm like, so why wouldn't you then do that in this career? Because I'm going to tell you, you're not going to the show anymore. Like, this is your career now. But you're basically admitting that if you had a different job, you'd work harder. Like that, I just can't wrap my head around that. It doesn't make any sense to me. So then why wouldn't you apply that same method, that same discipline, that same mindset to the role that you have currently?
Right.
And you can see that aha moment where the lights go on. They're like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. Like I should be treating it as exactly that. And I think for somebody to actually say it to them is what it really takes. Like, yeah, this is my career. And if I was on the Celtics, yeah, I'd be working my ass off. So just apply it now to your current game.
Yeah, and by the way, like you can add this into your talk track, because this is exactly what we explain to the kids that go through our program. This is not different in the potential outcomes that you can drive if you were playing for the Celtics. You have the opportunity to make as much money as a professional athlete, and in the case of equity, much, much more money than a professional athlete. So like, to not approach it as a professional, you're missing something, man. Like, you're not seeing the opportunity the way you need to see it. You need to pretend you're on the Celtics, and no, you're not gonna, shoot free throws. You're gonna work on your messaging. You're gonna work on your how you read 10Ks and listening to earning calls and like all the other, it's just a different skill set. It's just different practice. It's the same mindset. It's the same motion. I love that you went down that path. It's so true.
It's it's spot on, JR. Man, it's like, I think, and like I'm able to do that today. I'm able to comfortably and confidently say that to younger reps because of that chubby 12-year-old that was doing laps on the track before football practice and running 15, 18 miles a week as a 12-year-old. And now I'm willing to, the alarm goes off this morning at, 4:35 a.m. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do this. But I'm like, dude, you've been doing it your whole life. Get your ass out of bed and go get after it. And it translates so far beyond your career. It translates to your relationship with your wife or your husband. It translates to your own mental health and just keeping that discipline for yourself, like even something as little as chores in the home, like all that stuff all ties back to that foundation as an athlete for doing the hard shit and having some discipline.
So true. Even as I'm a new parent, even as a parent, it pays off. Like it's a superpower, man. Like we try to hammer this home with every athlete and veteran in our program. Like you guys, you're ahead of the curve and you don't even know it, and you just need to learn how to apply it. What do you do? I'm sure you're still involved with the union as an alumni. I'm sure you're still involved with the union as an alumni. If a kid calls you from union and says, "Hey, I'm interested in sales," what does that conversation look like, Connor?
Yeah, I'll get the email or the LinkedIn message, and it'll depend on the day or the week. There are times where I want to see how much they want it. There are times where I don't respond to the first message intentionally, especially if it's for an open rec at my own company. I want to see some fire. I would love for them to be so all over me that I have to be like, all right, dude, like relax. I'm definitely going to take your meeting. I've just been a little underwater. Like I would greatly value that. And candidly, I haven't seen a lot of that in a long time. I think people send out the one message and then show's over. You know what I mean? But I think when I do eventually, have those conversations with individuals, especially when it comes to sales, the first thing I say to them is why. I want to know why they think they should be in sales, or why they even want to. And a lot of times, like, they don't know. They just know that, hey, I got a buddy, I got a brother, I got a teammate that just got a job at, this startup in Boston, and I just thought I would do the same thing. And then I think it's less about challenging them at that point and more just about education. Like, hey, this is what you should expect. This is why I chose this path. And there's nothing wrong with being in sales because you want to make money. There's absolutely zero wrong with that. It's that self-awareness to recognize, like, I'm not doing God's work. I understand. I see it as a means to an end. Obviously, I want to be able to support my family. I want to help out my parents. I want to do things that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But I also know that it's going to open up doors for me to potentially do the things that I really want to do and what I really care about. Being able to help out my hometown or the Boys and Girls Club back in Troy, or helping out in certain areas in Boston or where my wife's from. That's the stuff that it opens up those opportunities to be able to take care of the people that you care about.
Totally. It's and like, by the way, I think to your point, it is a means to an end, but what ends up happening, and I'm sure you had the same experience because you worked like me, you worked at like one of these like Boston blue chip startups that became like legendary in Clavio, and I was at Turbonomic for many years, and we had a very similar run, not up to an IPO, but to a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. What ends up happening is it's a means to an end for you to provide a great life for yourself and your family, but you end up loving it. Like, you end up being like getting good at it and being like, I actually really like helping customers solve business problems with technology. Like, it's actually pretty rewarding, and it's like anything else. Like, you don't follow your passion, you work for your passion, and the better you get at something, the more passionate you're going to be about it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, man. I think it's really rewarding and fun to see yourself put the effort in, those first 5-7 years in a profession, and then it just really starts to click. Like if a switch goes off and you just get it. You get the active listening piece. You know how to respond in almost every situation, but it's because you've prepared for that scenario. I hand up, I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm not a Boston guy, but I respect the shit out of what Belichick would have the Patriots ready to do in any goddamn scenario. 3rd and short, goal line defense, special teams, didn't matter. 2-minute drill. They were ready for everything because they prepared for it. And I challenge my reps, in an hour-long demo, you might have a 2 to 5 minute window where it's make or break to have that deal won. And it could be for a scenario or situation that you've never prepared for, whether it's about pricing or a competitor or a trial or what have you. And if you can nail that, then it's probably the difference between winning or losing that deal. So situational selling and situational preparedness is just a huge component of training and coaching that we do.
Dude, the best example of that actually is a Patriots example. It's the Malcolm Butler interception against the Seattle Seahawks, right? They didn't run into that play the entire season, but they worked on that play every single practice the entire season, right? So like when they lined up and he read that play, he knew exactly what he needed to do because he was prepared for it. And the rest is history. Sorry, as a Dolphins fan, I know that's not that exciting as it is.
Oh, it's all good, man. Yeah. It's all good. I can put I love ball. I appreciate the hell out of people that run efficiently and teams that run efficiently. And I have so much respect for what they did, what Tom did. I mean, it was just lights out. It's incredible.
This is off.
I'm happy it's over though.
Yeah, it is over. It's over. We're mourning. We're mourning here. How does a kid from Troy, New York, become a Dolphins fan? I have to understand that.
Yeah, well, my older brother was a Dolphins fan. Like most things, I did what an older brother would do. But I would say by and large, it was Marino, man. Dan Marino grew up in Pittsburgh. He was frankly just like big, white, handsome dude that grew up in a tough neighborhood, and it was everything that I wanted to be. And I was like, all right, I'm going to follow him.
Hey, that is a good dude to look up to, man. I'm a big Marino guy.
He's awesome.
I think you did a really good job, Connor, about talking about why sales is awesome. The biggest thing we run into, and we didn't prepare for this question, so hopefully I don't catch you off guard. The biggest thing we run into is most of the kids that come across our desk are kids like you and I were when we got out of school, which is like, I didn't think about my career. It was kind of like 3 days after graduation, my dad was like, you need to get a freaking job. And people were telling me, dude, you should do sales, JR. You can communicate, you're competitive, like all the reasons we hear. But my initial thought was the same initial thought that every kid we come across has, which is like, I don't want to be a used car salesman. Like, can you just talk about like why that notion is so outdated from your perspective, and like what sales is as a profession in the reality of like being a professional at a company like Klaviyo, at a company like Fintrex, what you're actually doing as a salesperson?
Yeah, I love this topic. And I think it's a really awesome conversation to have. And I think it is antiquated in a lot of ways, but I would also say that sales in general is a super saturated profession. And the truth is there's a lot of really bad sales reps out there that unfortunately carry that stigma forward on a daily basis. And being communicative and having that ability to communicate is really important, but also being a great listener is really important. And a lot of sales reps don't know how to do that. They don't know how to do that effectively. They don't know how to isolate, what it is or what the pain is of a prospect or a customer, and then ultimately align that with the value that the product can offer. So that's what I would say is one core piece. And then I'd say the second is sales has changed dramatically. Certainly since I started 12-ish years ago, and certainly since, beyond that, past 2 decades of some really successful companies that have come up. And it is a product-led environment now for the most part. There's so much intel on product, on companies that's out there. I mean, when a prospect or customer comes in to have this conversation, they're so much more educated than they ever used to be. They assume a trial, they assume discounts, they assume all these things that are really delicate to navigate as a sales rep unless you're well trained on how to manage expectations and how to manage that conversation and how to hit pause and say, hey, totally respect where you're coming from. Why don't we focus on this for the second and we'll get to everything else. So yeah, I would say to summarize, there's a lot of shitty sales reps out there that carry that stigma forward. The sales environment has changed dramatically, and customers and prospects are just super educated. There's a lot out there for them.
Yeah, I actually, that's literally the way I explain it is information asymmetry. It does not exist anymore. It used to be the seller had this much information and the buyer had this much information. Now you're coming in a lot of cases, they actually have more information than you do because they've talked to your competitors, right? So your job 100%. Your job as a sales professional is to like diagnose and like truly understand what they're trying to accomplish and what the gaps are and decide with them, not for them, with them, if your solution can fill those gaps better than their alternative choices. So in reality, a sales professional is a consultant. The only difference between us, me and you, and a McKinsey person is that we have to get their attention first and then we have to ask for their money at the end. And those two bookends are very uncomfortable for 99% of the population, but that's what the money's for. You know what I mean? That's what the money's for.
That's right. That's what the job is, selling.
Exactly. All right, brother. This is the last question. We ask every guest this. We talk about the reason we focus on athletes and veterans is because we feel like they come from a background where they've been dialed in. They've had a purpose. They know what they need to practice and become excellent at. And they've developed a passion to go and go achieve greatness in that thing. And all we have to do as an organization is to see if they can do that now in this new profession. So what does being dialed in, what does that mean as a sales professional to you?
I would say it's a combination of a few things. And I would say by and large, it's almost taking everything we've just talked about and combining it all together. You hear it in football a lot, find out your why, find out whatever's going to drive you and really what your purpose is to go out and pursue this. But also commit to yourself, but commit to your team, commit to your boss, commit to your manager. We have non-negotiables on my team, and it's something that I deliver to my group, either a new hire or a new sales org. And the first two are totally unrelated to sales. It's be a great teammate and work your ass off, because that's what you're going to get from me. And anything outside of that is a non-negotiable and just simply won't be tolerated. So have commitment to yourself, to your team, commitment to your craft. And I said this earlier, but there really is no replacement for just working your ass off. And if you find that that's not aligned or you're going through the motions, then have the respect to say, hey, this isn't for me, this particular job or this particular company, and move on. Have that commitment and respect to yourself and the team and the business that you're working at.
100%. Connor, this was awesome, man. This is like #required listening. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
I appreciate it, brother. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, JR, thank you so much, man. I love the platform. I love what you guys are doing. I think there's such a gap and a need for it, especially for athletes and especially to the men and women that are coming back from defending our freedom. I think it's absolutely awesome stuff, and just appreciate the heck out of you, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shiftgroup.io.